How's it going, everybody? I am really excited to start this project for a couple of reasons, but the main reason is this is literally the first saw that I ever ported. First model of saw. Now, as you guys know, I bought this from a local auction. It's a Stihl 026 red lever. So it's an early, I believe this would be an early 026. It is pristine, runs good. It needs a fuel line and a few other things, but today's video, let's start working on this. I'm really excited. Let's talk about what we're going to do with it and just get right into this. I'm excited.
She cuts, eh?
So before we get started, I want to talk about my history with the 026. So how I got into chainsaws. My wife and I bought a house in the city that had a wood burning fireplace, an old school 70s fireplace with the chain mesh that closed. It wasn't a sealed unit, totally inefficient, but we started burning wood in there. So I needed a chainsaw. My first chainsaw was like box store Ryobi, or just an offshore rebranded saw. It ran horribly. It started when it wanted to. I didn't know how to sharpen a chain. It was just horrible. And so my second saw I bought on a local classified ad. It was a Stihl 025, and I ran that saw forever. It was substantially better than what I had run. Now, fast forward, friends, we move out here about 12, 13 years ago. We moved out here, and I started working in this shop, and we had a wood stove, wood fireplace in the house, and we had a wood stove out here. And my need for firewood became greater and greater. So my need for saws became greater. Well, I started to realize that I didn't know anything about chainsaws. That's where I found the YouTube. I found Buckin's videos. I started learning how to sharpen, and kind of the rest is history. Now, where does the Stihl 026 come in? Well, what ended up happening is my neighbor moved, and I was storing a whole bunch of his stuff here. And one of the things I was storing was a Stihl 026. It was on my bench for probably a year or two, and what happened was we had a storm. My Stihl 025 had an air leak. Well, of course, I kept running it, and I blew it up. So I grabbed the Stihl 026 that was underneath the bench and tried to start it. Well, it had no compression. It was blown up too. So I phoned my neighbor and said, "Hey, what are you going to do with that saw?" And he said, "You can have it." So I was pretty excited. An 026 magnesium case, not a clamshell. It was my first professional saw. So that's when I started diving into the YouTubes, other channels that have gone, or some are still around, and started learning about how to rebuild chainsaws. Now, this wasn't my first rodeo with fixing things, but I'd never really worked on chainsaws. So that's kind of what got me interested in YouTube. The first bottom end I ever rebuilt was a Stihl 026. That's probably getting to be about 10 years ago. And I used to just rebuild saws. I ended up having 3 of these things at once. And the first saws I ever ported, probably 7, 8 years ago, were these. And porting them without a wheel. And they ran pretty good, as I can remember. So those saws have gone. They're around here locally somewhere. I sold them. And I haven't had a Stihl 026 in a long time. So I'm really excited to get into this. Again, this saw runs. Let's see if we can get it to fire. I've had it running. I haven't cut with it. But I'll move you guys up. Let's just show that this thing runs. Now, I bought this from an auction. I probably paid too much for it, but that's the way she goes. It's a little different for me, friends. When I want something for content, it's important that I get it. So I'll usually just try and buy it, right? I think I paid $200 for this saw at auction, friends, which is a lot for an auction saw. Now, it turned out to be mint, so I didn't overpay, but it was a risk I was willing to take. Okay? Oh, does she want to start? Maybe she don't want to start. Now again, friends, if you're new to saws and this is what you deal with, this is frustrating. Well, I don't even know if this saw is going to start. Let's give her a little more, let's see where the low jet's at. Half. We're at 1. I'm going to go 1 1/4. 1 1/4. Okay. So again, friends, this thing ran, but it doesn't run very good. So first things first, let's do a complete assessment of this saw and rip it down. So I'm going to get you guys in close. Let's start tearing this thing down. I'm going to build this into the ultimate old guy saw. Lightweight. Let's see if we can get some power out of this thing. Let's go old school on this saw. I did have it running and it ran pretty good. So I'm not sure why it doesn't want to run now. I got a box here. Just going to throw everything into the box. And I need a scrunch. Do I have my scrunches here? I do not. Friends, give me a second. I'm going to grab some tools to make sure I turn this thing down. Okay, I just wanted to grab a scrunch. Now, I showed you guys that. I didn't know if the saw would start or not, but the main thing for me in a saw that I'm going to cut wood with, because like sometimes you got to travel. I don't know about you guys. This thing's mint. Tyndall Power Products, local dealer. I think they're still around. Anybody from Tyndall? Is Tyndall Power Products still around? But the main thing for me is when I am traveling to cut wood, I better bring saws that start, okay? Now, the reason why this saw won't run is the fuel line. I rigged up a fuel line that's a little questionable, so I could see the fuel's leaking. So right there, a saw like this, you're better off to just go through it and make it run. Okay, so let's start tearing this thing apart. Show you guys kind of the ins and outs. Now, I don't know if this saw needs a complete tear down. I need to own shares in Ziploc because Lord knows I buy enough stuff, or enough Ziploc bags. Ziploc, if you'd like to reach out to me. I'm just kidding, guys. So a saw like this, even if you buy it and you get a good deal and it's minty, for me, tear it down, clean it up. That way you know what you got. You didn't throw all these dirty parts in here. Let's take the circlip off for the clutch, right there. It's got a 325/7 on it. Clutch needle. Okay, now if you're not sure where these parts go, keep them together. Take this off. Now, one thing you want to do before you take the saw apart is, again, I need to grab my impact here. Okay, let's see if we can get this thing off. Okay, I always forget to do that. Always take the clutch off before you take the cylinder off. Look inside of there. It's just full of stuff that we don't like. So, like I said, Me, if this was my saw and I was gonna cut with it, I would just take it apart. Even if it looks perfect, I would just go through it. This saw is probably, what, 30 years old? Being a red lever saw, it's probably in the 30-year-old bracket. Okay? And to me, you're just better off to make it right again. This saw is in nice shape. Now, all I'm doing here is I am going to take this apart and put chain brake parts with chain brake parts, etc., etc. That way, when I put it back together, it's just easier. Because I don't work on these all the time. I know these pretty good. I've been inside to many of these. I've rebuilt a lot of these saws over the years. The 026. Okay, now I want to take everything off of this saw. I'm going to lay my finger over here. I'm going to grab my scrunch. See if we can do this without losing an eye. Right there. Oh. Don't mind me, friends. This is the channel of reality, right? I could have edited those first two attempts out, but what good would that be? Okay, now there's a circlip on here. Take that off. Drop it. Grab it with the magnet. And throw all this stuff into here. Okay, I blew all the crud out of there. You guys can see it looks a lot better now. And let's get this thing apart. And throw everything in the same bag. Just way easier to put back together. Oh, I'm missing this clip here. This one's for the Stihl guys. I get ragged on all the time. How come you don't got Stihls on your channel? I don't know. Not a lot of Stihls for sale here, I guess. That's just how she goes. I just pretty much work on whatever I can get, friends. And that's just how she is. There you go. Okay, pull that out. Chain brake goes in the box. Throw this in the bag. This, don't lose that. I've lost a few of these in my day. Never a good deal when you lose that stuff. Okay, let's take this off. Like, this thing still has the chain catch on it. Normally those are cut off or broken off. This saw came from firewood country, so it's generally the saws from out that way where I bought this. Look at this, friends, just full of oil. Ugh, this thing's pretty dirty. Let's get a rag here. I'm just gonna try and do this one in real time, the way we used to do it, friends. Remember back in the day, I would just, before I knew how to edit or do anything like that, I'll just turn the camera on and go. Well, let's do that. Let's kick it old school. We got an old school saw here from back in the day, and this stuff's all good. Let's take this off. That should be an 8mm on the back. Now, I know this appears to be a mint condition running saw. Why would you take it apart? Well, I think it's got an air leak. I really do, because it starts. The reason I think it has an air leak is it starts kind of like it has an air leak. It's hard to start. It's hard to tune. Yeah, the fuel line and filter are kind of cobbled together, but I don't know. Just to me, it's screaming out, I have an air leak. So if you have an air leak, you should fix it. Otherwise, the saw's gonna grenade. Okay, let's keep going. I don't think there's any oil in this saw. We better check. Nope, none, nada. Excuse me. Okay. Might as well take the pipe off now. Now, right now I'm already thinking, am I going to pipe this saw? Maybe. I don't think I've ever seen a piped 026. I mean, I'm sure somebody's done it, but... Now I'm thinking to myself, I'd like to make like the ultimate 50cc work saw. I really like these saws out of the box, especially with a muffler mod and a base gasket delete. I've always liked these things. Same with the 025. Wow. Look at the carbon in there. Gross. Use good oil, friends. Mechanics don't care what oil you use as long as you use it at the right amount. And just use a good oil at the right amount. That's all I'm going to say. I don't do oil debates. I don't mix my oil too thick because the modern oils, I find you get a lot of ash, a lot of this going on if you mix it too thick. That's all I'm going to say about that. I'm like a 45-50 to 1 guy, and that works for me. And the reason why I've come to that mixture is because I take my own saws apart and look, and you can tell a lot just by how oily the bottom end is and if you're getting carbon on top of the piston. Now, the reason why I see a lot of saws like this carboned up, especially the mufflers, where I live, is saws like this are used, say, in an acreage generally. And I'm just going to throw this into the box. They're used on an acreage, and guys just run them real quick and shut them off. They don't get hot enough to burn any of the carbon. Okay, and again, I'm going to stuff this exhaust port and blow all this crud out of here. Trying to keep this as clean as possible for when we do take the engine apart. It'll save us hassle later. Again, this piston looks real minty on this saw. So it's a good thing. Okay, let's keep going. I'll put all these plugs in here. Recoil. Now, funny thing, these are a pro saw. They do have a plastic handlebar. Never had a problem with them. I've never broken one, but, you know, just, I don't know if that's to consume weight or, you know, conserve weight or what, but these saws, I've never seen one with a metal handle. I don't know if they ever made one, but. Okay, recoil. A couple things. I'll put a new rope in this saw. The rope's starting to fray. Okay, just things I do. This thing's never been apart, I guarantee it. Squeaky. Recoil squeaky, so we know right there. And again, pull this out. Wow, is this saw dirty? With the life of a saw builder, eh? At least the way I do it. Take the coil bolts off. 1, 2. I think we're going to do a bunch of Stihls back to back to back here. I think I've made up my mind. I'm going to split my 044. That saw, I've been running that saw for a long time. It's given me great service, but the last couple of years, I've been kind of half repairing it. And by half repairing it, I mean, that saw's never been apart. It's got original crank bearings. It's on its second or third top end now. Original cylinder, but it's had quite a few. It's had quite a bit of time on it, and it's time to just do a complete rebuild. When I bought that saw, I didn't have any money. Oh, I spent all my money on the saw, and I had no money for parts, so I bought a piston. What did I buy? Did I buy a piston? I think I put a Meteor piston in that saw, and that was it. And threw it back together. I don't even think I did crank seals. I threw the saw back together. I bought a handle and a Meteor piston. And the saw, I think I was into that saw for about $300. And that was it. Because again, I needed to cut firewood. Didn't have any money. Didn't have, you know, a YouTube channel or anything like that. And that was it. And that saw ran for a long time. And I haven't had any issues with it until suddenly that one day it started running funny. And I've just basically been nursing along ever since. Now I got to go through my parts. These AV mounts are kind of squishy. They've spent a lot of time bathed in oil. So we'll see if we can do something with that. If I remember correctly, these just slip out of here. This one. This one. I can't remember. Well, that's one thing, friends. I like the on-off switch of the Husqvarna. I think it's a better design. These spring clip things, I don't like them. And I know the Stihl guys will be like, darn you, Tin Man, but seriously, guys, I don't see a need for all this extra. You know, what's wrong with a switch? I think a switch is just fine. So that's like totally stuck in there. I don't even know if I can get it out. Looks like it's crimped. Well, how am I going to get that through here? I guess we'll figure that out real quick. That's actually the reason why I'm a Husky guy. I mean, I like the way they run. They're just easier to work on. And I find, I mean, all saws are reliable. I don't find one brand's better than the other. There's your coil. I find Huskies are just easier to work on. They're just simpler. There's less parts. And that's why generally I'm working on Huskies. I like simple. Simple's better than more complicated. And that's just how I feel about it. Take these bolts off. 2 8mm nuts on the back here. Typical Stihl. They all have these pretty much. I don't mind this. I like Stihl's carburetor setups. But again, I think a cable's easier to work on. But I think these work good. They tend to not have air leaks. And I was looking earlier, although I didn't really prep for this. The bottom of this handle is not a Torx. It's actually a flathead, which is good. Take all this apart. Handle. Just throwing everything into a box. Again, bagging everything. This thing is absolutely disgusting. It is oily, dirty. This saw has never been taken apart. It's never been cleaned properly. I can just tell. Okay, and there's what's left of the fuel line. That was just me. I just kind of rigged up one. It kind of worked for a bit, but... Okay, impulse line. These all have this ring. This is a typical Stihl setup. So one thing about Stihls I like, they're all pretty much the same. Like when you take them apart, they're very similar. Okay, put all this in here. Take this ring out. Do not forget this ring. You'll get a massive air leak. Be careful when you do this. That's how I do it. I just push it through. Okay. Take the top handle off. If I take too long, maybe this will be a two-part video. I don't think I've ever had a two-part video. This thing's full of mud in the bottom. Wow. This saw is just all kinds of dirty. Give me a second here. Okay. This is why my bench is always so dirty, because I'm always working on stuff like this. I don't know. I like working on the old stuff. That's just me. I've always been that way. I'm always that way. Motorcycles, same thing. I like the old or the weird bikes that nobody's seen or heard of. I think this summer, if the time is right, friends, I have a 1989 Ducati 750 Sport sitting in my sunroom that's been there for about 10 or 12 years. I'd like to hear that bike run again. It's got dry clutch, open belts, 2 Mikuni flat slides in place of a single Dell'Orto carburetor. Great bike. That bike will do 150 mile an hour on a straightaway if you give her what she needs, and super cool. Okay, take the flywheel off. That's regular thread. Get one of these if you're going to work on Stihls. It's super handy to have. These flywheels can be a bear without this. Okay, just like that. Easy cheesy. Okay. Undo that. Put my flywheel in the box. Make sure I keep the key. Oh, the key's stuck in there. Now, that crank seal looks original. It's one of those blue ones. Wow, look at this case, friends. I'm really glad I took this apart. It's actually rotten on the bottom. So, I'm going to have to... Did not foresee that coming. Yeah, this thing's been sitting on the floor for a long time. I think it's okay. Yeah, we're going to have to split this thing completely down. Just to make sure. Just to make sure there's no holes through the case. I don't think there is. That's too bad. I thought this was like a 10 out of 10 condition-wise. Saw. It looks like a 10 out of 10. Here, let's use an impact to take out a spark plug. Oh, did you guys see that? Don't do that. Okay, let's take the handle off. Get this thing down to the bare motor. Oil pump. Take that off. I think I'll split and rebuild this bottom end in a different video. We'll kind of break it up. A lot of you guys have these. I wanted to show you guys the full disassembly. And we'll take this thing apart. We'll build it. I'm not sure how this hose comes out. Does it come off of here? It's got some kind of like clamp on it. Weird. I don't even know how that works. Is that like some kind of clamp, friends? Weird. I don't even know what to say about that. So I'm just going to leave that for now. Definitely need crank seals on this saw. Okay, let's take the handle off. We already have the top mount off. Okay, that was this one right here that we took off earlier. Take off these two. Now, one of the main reasons why I prefer to run older Huskies is a lot of them have spring anti-vibe already, like early on. And, you know, it's way better on the hands. Like 394. 394 has spring anti-vibe. My 394 is like a 30-year-old saw. And it still has spring anti-vibe. 262. So, push this through. Stihl definitely knew what they were doing. Okay, undo that. I'm replacing this impulse line, but okay. Pull out the impulse line. Dirty, dirty, dirty. That's how these things are. Working on saws is not for the faint of heart. So there you guys go. We're down to the bare motor, and I think we're going to keep this video as short as possible. Thank you to everybody that's hung out to the end. And there you go. From a full saw running, it wasn't really running, but from a complete saw to this in, what, 15, 20 minutes? It doesn't take that long. Now, I am cheating. I've done these before. I have all the tools like this. If you don't have one of these, buy one. This is just a generic one that I got online, like 15, 20 bucks. It's totally worth it. Okay, friends. Well, I think we're going to leave it at that. Okay, well, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. That's how you tear down an 026 down to the bare engine. There is more work to do on this saw, but I figured in the interest of keeping it as short as possible, and I didn't really want to do much in the way of editing or any editing, I figured I will just leave this as it is, and I'll continue on the next video. The next video, we'll tear down the top end, have a look at it, and we'll split the cranks, the crankcase, and let's redo the bearings and seals and start over again. I also really got to have a look at this case. It's in rough shape. I still think it's going to be usable. I don't know. I'd have to look, friends, in my Stihl parts. I might have another crankcase for this. A left side that's in good shape. The right side's in really nice shape. A little bit of damage on the bottom, but I think for our purposes, this saw will be fine. And that's why, friends, if you're going to buy something at an auction or you're going to buy a used saw, look how nice this saw looked. I was calling this a 9 out of 10 to anybody that asked me. There's still got pretty much all the paint on the front. The plastics are shiny. But here's the thing, friends. I'll bet you money this thing's been sitting on the floor of a damn shop for 10 or 15 years before it came to me. So, just be aware when you're buying used saws. Don't pay too much because you can find you have a giant hole in the case, and that's why the saw won't start. So anyhow, thanks for watching. Take her easy. I'll see you in a couple days. Later.